welcome to Living Chronic, the podcast that explores the realities of living with chronic illness and disability while redefining how we thrive in our personal and professional lives. I'm your host, Brandy Shantz, a disabled veteran and chronic illness warrior, here to discuss the challenges, triumphs, and untapped potential of life with a chronic condition. Before we dive in, please take a minute to hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening. Now, let's change the way we think about disability together.
And the most important of those lessons is this: when a nation breaks its promises with its veterans, it does more than betray its values. It weakens its security and it undermines the readiness of its future armed forces.
This is Brandy Shantz, and you're listening to Living Chronic. Today, I have a special episode covering the United for Veterans rally that occurred here in Washington, D.C. on Friday. I was very honored to be able to cover this rally. I am a disabled veteran. My husband is a retired Army officer, and I'm a former military brat. My father served in the U.S. Navy. So I was born into the military and have remained there in some capacity ever since. I truly believe that maintaining veterans' benefits, keeping our promises made to veterans are some of the most important things we can do in this country. The military and veterans, they're my family. They always will be my family. So being included in this rally and the coverage of that rally was truly an honor. And with that in mind, I would like to start by thanking the organizers of the event, and especially Arabella Meyer and Joe Plensler. They really did welcome me in and allowed me to just have the time of my life getting to interview people and get behind the scenes of this rally. It was truly an honor. I got to sit next to reporters from Rolling Stone and New York Times and Washington Post. And this lady with a podcast really felt special to be included in that group. So, again, a really big thank you. I enjoyed every second of covering this rally. So, why cover the United for Veterans rally? Well, the obvious reasons, but disabled veterans, we're living chronic just like everybody else, and that is a part of my family. So, I thought it was very important to cover the rally and be able to talk about what was said, how people feel, and where people are coming from. This rally was billed as a bipartisan rally, and for me, that's very important. As a disabled veteran, I cannot afford for veterans' benefits to become a wedge issue. This is an important issue. These are benefits earned, promises that must be kept. And I believe that even in our partisan and very vitriolic times, we need to remember that there are bipartisan efforts and should be bipartisan efforts. And this is one of them. This podcast, I do not talk politics. I try to keep this particular show without a political bend, if you will, because I want everybody to feel welcomed and included. This is a show about living chronic. This is a show about learning to live with disability and illness and fighting our way through various difficulties, whether it be the healthcare system, the workplace, um, insurance, our day to day lives, parenting, relationships, all of these things. And I don't want anybody to feel that they are not included in this because they may have a different political point of view than someone else. I certainly have taken up a couple of issues, but there are always issues that affect us. And I will always support chronically ill and disabled persons, especially my fellow disabled veterans, no matter the political bend. If it supports us, I support that. So, with that in mind, I really wanted to go to this rally and take a look at this from a bipartisan lens and take a look at this just from the lens of how are we supporting veterans and how are we bringing people together, because we need to work together if we are going to succeed in our efforts to maintain veterans benefits and ensure that the promises made are promises kept. So, exciting week for me last week. It started with an interview with Ken Casey of Dropkick Murphys, which was a very exciting moment for me. It was mentioned by a couple of veterans at that press conference that Dropkick Murphys music was the soundtrack of Iraq and Afghanistan. And that is true. They were the soundtrack of Iraq and Afghanistan. And there's a special place, I think, in many military and veterans' hearts for Dropkick Murphys. So having that opportunity to interview Ken Casey was special. He has been busy as always. He has been doing the stuff he always does. There's the Clad Owl Fund, which supports nonprofits with a focus on children and veterans. He, like I said, he's done a lot of work to support military and veterans over the years. So we really appreciate it. It's very appropriate that he and Dropkick Murphys would be performing at this rally. He has done um, so many things that I don't think most people even know about. He's performed at memorial ceremonies for veterans or for military who've been killed in action. He has done a lot of charity work and fundraising to support us. And most recently, he has been doing work to support Ukraine, specifically delivering ambulances to the front. I learned that an ambulance on the front they're targeted by Russia and have an average lifespan of only 11 days. 11 days. So delivering these ambulances to the front, super important to the cause and the mission in helping Ukraine. And I know that there's a lot of appreciation there for the work he's doing. The band also has some new music coming out. They have a new album dropping on July 4th. And we had an opportunity to hear some of the new music on Friday. Great music. I know I'm a fan, so I'm very biased, but definitely check it out. Their single, Who Will Stand With Us? It's a great song. I think you'll love it. Go to their website, check it out. It was amazing. Great time to be had. And of course, if you follow my Instagram, you probably caught some good moments from that concert. It was a lot of fun. So, when I had the opportunity to speak with Ken Casey, I really wanted to talk a little bit about politics, which of course is different for me. But while there, meet this head on. Dropkick Murphys is known for their support of Democratic candidates. They're known for supporting more liberal causes. They're known for supporting the working man, unions. Uh, you know, they're a very political band. But for those of us who are fans, we also know they've had some really great bipartisan moments. So Ken Casey pretty famously supported Charlie Baker, a Republican, for governor of Massachusetts. And he said he chose character over party. And I thought that was a great lesson for bipartisanship. Of course, Charlie Baker had amazing polling. Yeah, everybody loves Ken Casey in Massachusetts. But it does say a lot when somebody who has supported Democrats and liberal causes will turn and say, you know what, I'm going to support a person, that character over a party. And I thought it was important to mention and ask about. He also pretty famously had an exchange with a fan at a concert. He saw some people in the crowd wearing some Trump gear and made a bet with them. Dropkick Murphys gear is all made in the USA. He bet these fans that the Trump gear was not made in the USA. And of course, he won the bet. And I wanted to ask about that as well. It seemed like a really great lesson in how to have an exchange with somebody that you disagree with and not get into an argument or a fight or be, nasty, vitriolic, all of these things that we're becoming more used to hearing in the US. And I'm glad I talked to him about that because he did talk about how, he's human just like the rest of us. And we can be emotional, we can be um, very reactive in how we feel about things and just spill out something not necessarily in the most positive manner. But he does keep these core values at heart, and knowing who Charlie Baker was helped him to support that particular Republican. And he also talked about how thankful he was that he felt restraint when speaking with that fan, because it turns out the fan has been going to his concerts for 25 years. And he spoke to him after the concert and this fan told him that, he's been there going to his concerts for 25 years, listening to his music. He felt he was family, and family never lets politics come between them. And I thought that was a really great story. And, again, Ken noted that he was glad he was patient that day because he's not always patient. None of us are. I've been known to have an outburst. We get angry. There's a lot of emotion tied up in politics today in the US, but sometimes we just have to try to reach out and find what we have in common instead of focusing on what is different. And I think he said it quite well when Ken Casey said, if we can't come back to civility, we're screwed. And that is the big takeaway from the rally on Friday. And what I really want to talk about and focus on in this discussion about the United for Veterans rally, I did get a chance to speak with a lot of people at the rally. And of course, as expected, there were plenty of anti Trump signs. There were plenty of people who were there with, your funny memes, some big jokes. There were certainly some partisan speakers. But I also met a lot of people who were there just to support veterans. And I tried to seek out people who were there with the signs just supporting veterans, the people there with unions or other employment groups. As you know, I have a strong focus on hiring disabled veterans. So I wanted to hear from those people. I live in the Washington, D.C. area. I mean, as a matter of fact, my neighborhood is the bluest spot in the entire state of Virginia. So I can talk to an anti Trump person any day, every day. I can walk out my front door and probably scream, "Hey, who hates Trump?" and have 15 people just run over to talk to me. I wanted to talk to the people who were not there as a protest to Trump. I wanted to talk to the people who were there just for the veterans. And I'm certainly glad I did. I spoke with people who identified as Reagan Republicans. I spoke with people who identified as independents. I spoke with a couple of people who voted for Trump himself. But they all felt that the real issue at the heart of this was veterans and supporting veterans. Because again, for those of us who are sick, for the many disabled veterans out there, we cannot afford for veterans benefits to be a wedge issue. We need this to be bipartisan. We need widespread support. What was so amazing about speaking with them is we really had that opportunity to focus on what we had in common. And we focused on veterans benefits. We focused on our stories. I had the opportunity to speak with three women who were all Navy veterans, just like my father. And just like me, all three of them had children who went into a different service. Of course, my husband and I both had fathers in the Navy. We both took off for the Army, much to the distress of our fathers. But these women all had the same story. Each one had children in a different service. One had a son in the Marines. Um, we had the Army represented. We had one in the Air Force. So it was really great to see my story reflected in a group of really great women. And we talked a lot about not just veterans benefits, but the future. All three of them have children in the military. And they want to support and know that these children will be taken care of as promised when they themselves become veterans one day. So much of this rally was also about supporting the military who will become veterans later on. I spoke with a lot of people from unions as well. And as we know, there are a lot of veterans losing their jobs out of the federal government right now. And it's not just about giving a job to a veteran, it's about maintaining dignity for the workforce. Disabled people can contribute to the economy, and we want to. And ensuring that accommodations can be met and ensuring that we do what we can to maintain employment for disabled veterans, disabled people especially, is really important. Uh, Workers' rights are essential. And as we walk into this new world that we're entering with AI, and everybody's discussing whose job will be relevant and whose will be taken by AI, I think it's important to remember that workers' rights and human rights are very important, because often workers' rights are human rights. And this was something that was supported across the board out there. We need to maintain the dignity of workers, and ensuring that people are not fired indiscriminately should be upheld. And that was a very important message at the rally on Friday. It was a very important message. I also spoke with some folks who've been around forever. So, we had some young folks there, and I always love talking to the really young people. I'm, middle aged myself. I am an Afghanistan war veteran. My husband is a veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan. I guess I should just say the Iraq and Afghanistan years. A lot easier. But I also had the opportunity to speak with Vietnam veterans. And that really led to the heart of a lot of what was so important about this rally, and that was stopping the privatization of veterans affairs. As a person living with a chronic illness, and of course, speaking with some older veterans who have numerous health issues, we know the value of the VA hospital and our caregivers there. I know everybody thinks that privatization sounds like it must be better, giving us choice, access to doctors. But the truth is, we have a shortage of doctors, nurses, healthcare providers in general all over the United States. It's far worse if you live in a rural area. But even I, living in the DC metro area, I have trouble accessing healthcare. Everybody's busy. Nobody wants to take the folks whose insurance pays out far less than a private insurance. So that does put us at a disadvantage. So when you say, well, we can send veterans to the community, let me tell you, the community does not have space for us. And we've already learned this lesson. Active duty military made the same mistake. They sent dependents to the community. They said, we're going to cut back, we're going to save money on military medicine and send dependents out to the community. The problem is they did not coordinate with the community. And of course, they learned the community had no space for these dependents. So, military families, many found themselves flying many states over just to try to get health care. It's been a disaster. Military medicine will admit it did not work. Why are we trying to do this with Veterans Affairs healthcare? It will not work. I can tell you, I live with illness. Nobody has space for me. And what's worse is I have some unique illnesses. I heard the same from some of these Vietnam vets that I interviewed, fellow Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. We have unique illnesses that the rest of the population does not have, whether it be specific war related injuries, amputations, PTSD. We also have the burn pits and other toxic exposure illnesses to deal with. Why is it important that we're at the VA? Because doctors who work at the VA can start to see patterns. Brigadier General Huston died of a very rare cancer. I interviewed his widow, June Huston. They knew something was wrong. He had lost a lot of weight rapidly. He was told over and over again, I don't know what's wrong with you, but it's not cancer. It was cancer. A rare cancer. But when you have veterans in one place together at the VA, doctors can start to identify patterns. They can start to identify trends. And this is how we start to diagnose these cancers earlier so that veterans may get treatment and possibly live. And I think that's one of the legacies that General Huston, and I know his widow, June, would like to come out of this. Keep veterans in VA so that we can diagnose quicker, so that we can save lives, so that the next veteran may be able to get treatment. They're learning a lot from us as well. I know I serve on the board of the Crohn's Colitis Foundation, and they can learn a lot about veterans coming back with IBD after serving near burn pits. We have something that they just don't have access to with most patients. The military has my DNA. They have information on me from when I was healthy. They have it today, now that I am not so healthy. That's very important for research. So we're even helping those outside of VA. There are benefits that go far beyond just paying for veterans' health care. And it's very important to point that out. When I spoke with veterans who are getting their care at the VA, we all said the same thing. I get better care at the VA. Please don't send me to the community. So that is very important to remember. That is one of the most important things to come out of this rally. Do not privatize Veterans Affairs healthcare. You're not just helping veterans, you're helping everybody. Imagine what they're going to find out from us and all the things that we are suffering due to toxic exposure. The rally was a really great opportunity to bond, to come together as one, because the truth is, veterans and military, as much as we're being pulled apart by politics, we still always find a way to come together because we are one family. And that rally really showcased it. It saw veterans from every possible place. I met people who came in from Florida. I met people who came in from South Carolina. I met people who lived in the DC area, some that flew in from the West Coast. So it's amazing how this commonality brings us together and brings us to a place of unity. And that's important, because if we want these things to happen, if we want veterans to maintain benefits, if we want to make the VA better, and I'm not saying that the VA is the best it is. I know it isn't. I would love to get in there with a Lean Six Sigma and start making some changes. But cuts to benefits aren't the way. Haphazardly firing VA workers is not the way. Privatizing is not the way. But if we're going to do this and we're going to do it right, then we need to come together and we need to have bipartisan efforts, and we need to do this well and smart. And we need to all agree on the facts. We need to agree that veterans matter. We need to agree that promises made should be promises kept. Because, as Ken Casey said so very well, if we cannot come back to civility, we're screwed. Thank you for listening. Don't forget, call your representative, support Veterans Affairs, stop the privatization.
So let's call what it is. This budget bill is a middle finger to our heroes. Where's that middle finger? Raise that thing high. It's a slap in the face to the sacrifices that our veterans have made. Frankly, it's bullshit. And every one of us who serves should feel insulted. I certainly do, and I bet some of you do too. They're even firing fully trained, fully qualified members of our military who are parts of teams who are trans. who earned their positions as opposed to Pete Hegseth, who didn't earn his other than by sucking up to Donald Trump.
So what do you think is the most important thing that can come out of today's rally?
Well, the most important thing is to do away with the cuts that they're
That's
trying to
right.
do, and to do away with them trying to get rid of 80,000 federal workers.
Yes.
Because, like I said, that translates into a loss of services for the veterans.
It sure does. Thank you so much for your service, and thank you for talking to me today.
Thank you.
Veterans in general, we're all family.
That's
I mean,
right.
doesn't matter what branch of service you come from, we're family. We always connect because we have a common, something common. And so, it's unity means family, and that's why I'm here.
And we are always family. I always know that I have a home with my fellow veterans no matter where I'm at.
That's right. It's probably the biggest fraternity ever, right?
It is the biggest fraternity.
Democracy, and I think that's what's being played with a little bit.
That's a wrap for this episode of Living Chronic. I hope today's conversation gave you insight, inspiration, or at least a little reassurance that you're not alone on this journey. Living with a chronic illness or disability comes with its challenges, but it also comes with strength, resilience, and a community that understands. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might need to hear it. You could follow me on Instagram at Chronically Brandy Shantz, other socials at Brandy Shantz, or my website at brandyshantz.com for more discussions, advocacy updates, and everyday strategies for thriving with a chronic illness. And if you have a topic you'd like to hear about, send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing forward, keep advocating for yourself, and remember, you are more than your diagnosis. You are powerful, you are unstoppable. Thanks for listening to Living Chronic. See you next time.